بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الإمام البيقوني رحمه الله تعالى: ومرسل منه الصحابي سقط، وقل غريب ما روى راو فقط، وكل ما لم يتصل بحال إسناده منقطع الأوصال، والمعضل الساقط منه اثنان، وما أتى مدلسا نوعان: الأول الإسقاط للشيخ وأن ينقل عمن فوقه بعن وأن، والثاني لا يسقط لكن يصف أوصافه بما به لا ينعرف.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Al-Mursal. We talked about Al-Mursal for a little bit last time. Okay, and we mentioned that Al-Mursal is when the tabi'i, somebody who seen a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, says, Qala Rasulullah, says, the Prophet ﷺ said. When a tabi'i says, the Prophet ﷺ said. And because the tabi'i never seen the Prophet ﷺ, okay, that means that this hadith is da'if, that this hadith is weak, because it's disconnected. Okay? That's the asl, that's the default. But it could be that a mursal can be a sahih hadith, can be an authentic hadith. Alright? And Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, who is very strict when it comes to Al-Mursal, very strict, he laid down conditions for it to be accepted. From the conditions that he laid down is that the tabi'i has to be from the scholars of the tabi'een, min kibar al-tabi'een, and from the scholars of the tabi'een. At the same time, he has to be from the elder of the tabi'een. Yani even the tabi'een, you have different generations within the tabi'een. Okay? Just like the Sahaba. The Sahaba, you have the older generation, the Kibar, and you have the younger generation, the Sigar. Okay? So for example, you have Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. Alright? That's the older generation. That's the older generation of the Sahaba. And you have ones like Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Abdullah ibn Zubayr was the firstborn baby in Medina. By the time the Prophet ﷺ passed away, how old was he? He was 11 years old. Al-Hasan was about 8 years old. Al-Husayn was about 7 years old. Okay? Ibn Umar, maybe he just turned 20, 21, because he was 15 in the Battle of the Trench, which means that he was about 20, 21 when the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha was about 18 when the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So these are the younger generation, right? And then you have older people like Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was only 2 years younger than the Prophet ﷺ. Umar was only about maybe 12 to 13 years younger than the Prophet ﷺ. So you have different generations within the Sahaba. The same goes for the Tabi'een. You had different generations within the Tabi'een. So the later tabi'een, the younger tabi'een, a lot of them, they might have met some of the companions, maybe 1, 2, 3, some of them, but majority of their knowledge, they got it from the other tabi'een, the elder tabi'een. You guys see what I'm trying to say? So you have the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you have the Sahabi right here. Okay, you have the Sahabi right here. And then you have Kibar al-Tabi'een, the elder generation of the Tabi'een here. And you have the younger generation here. Okay? You got four, look at it as four chains. Most of the younger generation of the Tabi'een, most of their ahadith, they got it from the elders. For example, Az-Zuhri, Muhammad ibn Muslim, ibn Ubaidillah, ibn Abdullah, ibn Shihab, Az-Zuhri, the Shaykh of Imam Malik. He passed away in the year 124 after the Hijrah. Az-Zuhri is from Sigar al-Tabi'een. Even though he did meet some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, majority of his ahadith and majority of the people that he took knowledge from were from the Tabi'een. You see what I'm trying to say? See the problem? You see the problem that arises from the Sigar al-Tabi'een, the younger generation? Now instead of one person between them and the Prophet ﷺ, you have how many people? You got 2 people. So Shafi'i says to avoid this problem altogether, we have nothing to do with the Sigar al-Tabi'een. We take them out of the picture. The tabi'i has to be from the kibar, from the elder generation. So Zuhri, I'm sorry, you don't qualify according to Shafi'i's conditions. Another condition, he says that the narrator has to be trustworthy, and he has to be trustworthy and reliable. Has to be thiqah, and that's pretty obvious. Another condition is that he has to be somebody who's known to not narrate from any weak narrator. You have some narrators that narrate from everybody, the ones that are reliable and the ones that are not reliable, and some that are very strict. They don't let everybody through the door. Okay, so he says those who are strict and only narrate from the thiqah, from the reliable narrators, those are the ones that are accepted. Okay, so to give you guys an example of a tabi'i in which his marasil, in which his mursal hadith is accepted, an example is Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, alright? Or Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, alright? Sa'id al-Musayyib from Kibar al-Tabi'in, they say he was the most knowledgeable of the Tabi'in. And he only used to narrate from reliable narrators, alright? Okay, now, does this mean that the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, are weak? We have Kibar al-Tabi'in. We have the older generation of the Tabi'in. And then we have the Sahaba. And then we have the Prophet ﷺ. When we say that the person that he narrates from has to be reliable, aren't all of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ reliable? We say that, na'am, that is also, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ are reliable. But who said that tabi'i actually narrated it from a companion? How do you know? It could be that he heard from a peer of his, somebody from his generation, and that person heard it from a companion who heard it from the Prophet ﷺ. That could be the case as well, right? So that's why they say, that's why Shafi'i rahimahullah said that person has to be reliable. The person that he's narrated from has to be reliable. He has to be somebody who's known to narrate only from reliable narrators. Okay, like Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, as an example. Obviously, Shafi'i rahimahullah, some of the scholars, they said this is too extreme, this is too strict. Majority, the mainstream scholars, they say they're actually more lenient on this matter. Bottom line is, al-mursal, the origin of it is that it's da'if, but it can be authentic depending on who narrates. If it's somebody who's from the kibar al-tabi'in, from the elder generation of the tabi'in, somebody who's known to not narrate from to narrate only from reliable narrators, then that person's hadith is accepted. That person's hadith is accepted. Now mursal is just, all mursal does is defines the picture, right? The way it comes about. It doesn't say whether it's authentic or not. Okay, that's a whole different area. So you're trying to say mursal is any person, any tabi'i who says qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether it's authentic or not, without looking at its authenticity, it's still mursal. Okay, what we're trying to define right now is, does mursal become authentic? Yes, it does. When does it become authentic? That's what we're trying to say. All right. So when Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, who we just said that whenever he says qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of these hadith are authentic. Sa'id al-Musayyib, if he says qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it still remains a mursal, but it's mursal that is sahih, that is authentic. Okay, because mursal can be sahih and it can be da'if. It can be da'if. All right. What about a scenario in which a tabi'i narrates directly from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar rahimahullah is the first one to add this condition. He said, even if the person seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, did this ever happen? Did a tabi'i ever narrate from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. A man by the name of At-Tanuhi, and At-Tanuhi was the messenger from Hiraqal. From who? From Hiraqal. And he was one of the kings in which the Prophet ﷺ sent a message to. So he seen the Prophet ﷺ, and he heard some ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but he did not become Muslim. He became Muslim after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So he takes the ruling of who? Of a tabi'i. After he became Muslim, that's when he narrated some ahadith I heard from the Prophet ﷺ. Is that clear? So he's a tabi'i, but he directly narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. And his hadith is collected by Imam Ahmad, it's collected by Abu Dawud in his Sunan. Right? So who's the Sahabi? The Sahabi, we use the ta'rif for the definition of Ibn Hajar. Whoever meets the Prophet ﷺ and believes in him and dies and believes in him and dies upon it. Right? Believes in him, meets the Prophet ﷺ, believes in him right then and there, alright, and dies upon it. Dies upon what? Islam. وَإِن تَخَلَّلَهُ رِدَّةً. Even if he leaves the religion at some point. Okay? He's seen the Prophet ﷺ, he believed in him, became Muslim. Alright? After the death of the Prophet ﷺ, he left the religion, or even during his life. Say during his life, he left the religion and then he came back. Is he considered a Sahabi? Yes, he's a Sahabi. Yes, he's a Sahabi. Even if he leaves the religion. Okay, but he dies upon the religion. Even if he's a religion multiple times. And this happened. This happened to one of the governors of Egypt. One of the governors of Egypt. He, Abdullahi ibn Abi Sarh. Abdullahi ibn Abi Sarh, he was a Muslim. He became Muslim. He seen the Prophet ﷺ. He believed in him. And then he left the religion. And then later on, he made tawbah. He repented and he came back to the religion. Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh is still what? And he died upon a Muslim. In fact, Uthman radiallahu ta'ala an, he's the one who made him the governor of Egypt. Abdullah ibn Abi Sarh is still a Sahabi, even though he left the religion. Okay, you guys understand that? Same thing goes for this man, At-Tanuhi. At-Tanuhi, all right, even though it's the opposite. At-Tanuhi, he's seen the Prophet ﷺ, he heard a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but he did not become Muslim while he was alive. He became Muslim when? After his death. So he directly narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So if a tabi'i happened to see the Prophet ﷺ, then he does not go into the category of al-mursal. So when At-Tanuhi narrates a hadith collected by Imam Ahmad, At-Tanuhi, when he does this, is this hadith considered mursal? No, it's not. Why is it not mursal? Because he actually seen the Prophet ﷺ. So Al-Hafiz bin Hajar, he adds another condition to al-mursal, that he cannot see the Prophet ﷺ. Alright, there are others that became Muslim during the Prophet ﷺ's era, but they did not get the opportunity to meet the Prophet ﷺ. Like An-Najashi, the king of who? The king of what? Abyssinia or Al-Habasha. An-Najashi was what? Was Muslim. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed upon him. The Prophet ﷺ, he what? He prayed upon him. He prayed the funeral prayer on him. Right? Even though he wasn't there. And there's something called Salatul Ghaib, that you do the funeral prayer even though the body is not right there with you. Prophet ﷺ, he prayed upon Najashi. He was Muslim, but Najashi never met the Prophet ﷺ. Uwais al-Qarni or al-Qarani, right? He never met the Prophet ﷺ either. Okay, and there are others. Okay, these are known as al-Mukhadramin. Al-Mukhadramin. They seen the Prophet ﷺ. They lived during the Prophet ﷺ's time, but they didn't get the opportunity to see him. Okay, that is al-Mursal. All right, let's move on to our next the next line. وَالْمُعْضَلُ السَّاقِطُ مِنْهُ اثْنَانِ وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلَّسًا نَوْعَانِ. Al-Mu'ضal. What is al-Mu'ضal? What is al-Mu'ضal? Al-Mu'ضal is when a narrator skips two narrators. Okay, we said that the chain has to be connected. The chain has to be connected. One. They have to see the person before them all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ. And if one person narrates from somebody that he didn't see or never met, okay, or never heard from, then that is automatically munqati'. That is called what? Al-munqati', when it's disconnected with one person. But when it's disconnected with two people, he didn't skip one person, he skipped two people, right? That's even worse. Double the trouble, right? It's known as al-mu'dal. They made it a whole separate category because al-mu'dal is worse than what? Al-munqati'. It's even worse because you're skipping two people now. Alright? So when you have the younger generation of the tabi'een saying Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is it al-mursal or is it al-mu'dal? Huh? It is what? The younger generation of the tabi'een. Is it mu'dal or is it mursal? Mu'dal. Why? Because we said the younger generation of the tabi'een, even though they did see the Sahaba, majority of their ahadith, they got it from what? The older generation of the tabi'een. So you have the older generation of the tabi'een, you have the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and then you have the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Sighar tabi'een says Qala Rasulullah ﷺ, he's skipping two people. See that? The mursal is when the tabi'i, the older generation of the tabi'een skips one person directly to the Prophet ﷺ. Understood? Or any part of the chain. It doesn't have to be from that part of the chain. So if Az-Zuhri rahimahullah, Az-Zuhri, he says Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, automatically that hadith is what? Is mu'dal. Is mu'dal. And mu'dal is a da'if hadith, is a weak hadith. Okay? وَالْمُعْضَلُ السَّاقِطُ مِنْهُ اثْنَانِ, when you skip two people. وَمَا أَتَى مُدَلَّسًا نَوْعَانِ الأول الإسقاط للشيخ وأن ينقل عمن فوقه بعن وأن والثاني لا يسقطه لكن يصف أوصافه بما به لا ينعرف. Okay, now we get into something called al-mudallas or at-tadlis, and we discussed at-tadlis briefly in al-mu'an'an. What is at-tadlis? At-tadlis is, obviously in hadith terms, not linguistically. Hadith terms, at-tadlis is when a narrator says, he makes it seem like he heard it from somebody when he actually in haqiqatan never heard from, by using words like an or an. Okay? He makes it seem like he heard it from somebody, but he never heard from them. This is known as at-tadlis. Alright? So now, if the person says sami'tu or haddathani or akhbarani, I heard directly, this does not go into tadlis because he's clearly saying that I heard from him. Alright? He's not trying to hide anything. He clearly says, I heard from this person directly. Whether he's telling the truth or not, that's a different story. But he says clearly, I heard from this person. If a person says, for example, balaghani, it has reached me, he's obviously saying that I did not hear this directly. This does not go into it too. What are we talking about? When you use words that make it seem like you heard from him, when in reality you never heard from. So for example, you say qala, he said. That person said qala. Qala can mean what? It could mean that you heard from that person directly, and it could mean that you didn't hear from directly. It could go both ways. It's what? 50-50, right? You have an, can go 50-50. An, did you hear from directly? Or an, same thing. These words, when somebody uses these words and they actually never heard from after research, this is known as at-tadlis, and the person who does it is known as al-mudallis. And al-mudallis and at-tadlis, there are two types. There are two types of tadlis or mudallis. Alright? The first type is known as tadlisul isnad. First type is known as tadlisul isnad. Also known as tadlisus sama'. Also known as tadlisus sama'. Tadlisul isnad is when the narrator says, he uses an to a person and you never heard from that person, or skips somebody in the chain of narration. That is known as at-tadlis. You guys with me? This is known as tadlis. Alright? So, let's say for example, Baqiyyat ibn al-Walid. Baqiyyat ibn al-Walid is known as Shaykh al-Mudallisin. He's a Shaykh of tadlis. He does it all the time. Baqiyyat ibn al-Walid is a narrator. When Baqiyat al-Walid skips somebody in the chain, he heard from somebody, but he skips that person, and he mentions the person directly in front of them, directly ahead of them, and he uses an, so people don't say that he's lying. This is known as at-tadlis. You guys may be thinking, why do people do this? Why would a narrator do this? A number of reasons. One, so that people don't know that he actually took from that person. That person he skipped, maybe that person is weak, his narration is weak. Or maybe his narration, or he's not somebody that people like. He's not somebody that people like. Even though he may be reliable, people don't like him. So to avoid enmity between him and others, he just doesn't say his name. He skips him directly and he goes to the person right after him. Or to make it seem like he has a high chain of narration. Because when you skip a whole, right? When you skip a person that's not there, right? What do? You're making it seem like you heard from somebody who died probably before you were born. Or maybe, and he lived during your times, but if you met him, that would have been something great. People do it for multiple reasons. And when people do it, narrators, they do it. Okay? This is known as tadlisul isnad, tadlis within the chain. Okay? The second type is known as tadlis al-shiyukh. Tadlis al-shiyukh. And this is when a narrator, he narrates directly from his shaykh. He narrates directly from his shaykh. But he doesn't use the name that shaykh is known for. Okay? He doesn't use the name that the shaykh is known for. Okay? So for example, give me any narrator. Any narrator. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. You know? He wants to narrate from Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. But he doesn't say Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib. You know what he says? He says, for example, Sa'id al-Makki. Sa'id al-Makki. Sa'id from Mecca. When you say Sa'id al-Makki, you're going to think, oh, this is a whole new narrator. Ibn al-Musayyib is not going to come to your mind, right? Sa'id al-Musayyib is not going to come to your mind. Alright? For example, Az-Zuhri. He's known as Az-Zuhri, he's also known as Ibn Shihab, and he's also known as Muhammad ibn Muslim. But imagine if you come and you say Muhammad ibn Abi Muhammad al-Qurashi. Muhammad, the son of the father of Abu Muhammad al-Qurashi. Muhammad ibn Abi Muhammad al-Qurashi. Now that sounds like a whole totally different person, right? Even though in reality that's his name, Muhammad, and his father is Abu Muhammad, and he's from the tribe of Quraysh. Okay? Muhammad ibn Abi Muhammad al-Qurashi. That is tadlis. This is known as at-tadlis. Okay? So for example, Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. Somebody wants to narrate from Al-Shafi'i, Muhammad ibn Idris Al-Shafi'i. He says, for example, Abu Abdullah Al-Misri, or Abu Abdullah Al-Qurashi, for example. He's known as Al-Shafi'i, he's known as Muhammad ibn Idris, but Abu Abdullah Al-Qurashi, that's not going to come up to anybody's mind, right? That could be a lot of people, right? So changing his name, making it seem like he's a different person, that's a second type of tadlis. Why do people do this? Why would narrators do this? For a number of reasons. One reason is that they want to show that they're versatile and they take from many different shuyukh. Okay? When you're always narrating from Sa'id al-Musayyib, Sa'id al-Musayyib, Sa'id al-Musayyib, everybody's going to be like, okay, this guy, he only narrates from Sa'id al-Musayyib. So to change it up, to make it seem like he has many shuyukh, he says what? He says Sa'id al-Makki or something. Alright? To make it look like, Another reason is when you narrate from somebody that is unknown, people start listening like, who's that? Oh, somebody who's like not as known. Makes you seem like you know shuyukh that other people don't know. There are many reasons why people would do that. Another reason is maybe people don't like that person, for example. People don't like that person. Okay? Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah sometimes he used to say, even though this is not tadlis, Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, he used to say, حدثني من لا أتهم, or حدثني من أثق به. You know, I've heard from somebody who I consider reliable, and he doesn't mention his name, because that person wasn't liked. Or somebody that I don't accuse of anything. This is what Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah used to say, and some other narrators as well. Okay, so there are many different reasons why somebody would do tadlis, but these are the two types. What is the hukum? What is the ruling of a tadlis? If somebody who's known to do tadlis, or somebody who, and these are, we have the people that do tadlis, we have them written down. They are known. Okay, the scholars, they've actually researched this little by little. Every single person who did tadlis, even once, is known. There are those that do it a lot, like Baqiyat ibn al-Walid, who's known as Shaykh al-Mudallisin, the Shaykh of all those who do tadlis, right? And then you have people that do it maybe every once in a while, or very little, like Sufyan ibn Uyayna, for example. And there are some people who are intermediate. Okay, these people who do a tadlis, they say whenever they use the word an or qala, we don't accept their hadith right away. We don't accept their hadith right away. Rather, we look and we have to research. In fact, some scholars, the later scholars, they automatically say it's weak. But the early scholars, they say no, we don't say it's weak, but we look. Every case, we look at it separately. Okay, we're going to look at it. We're not going to accept it. It could be that it's weak, and it could be that it's authentic. All right? So, whenever somebody uses tadlis and uses the words an or qala, their hadith is not authentic, but we look at it and we see and we research. All right? And maybe inshallah we can practically apply this inshallah. When we finish the book, hopefully, or even during the book sometime, we can practically apply some of these things, and I can give you guys some chain of narration, some asanid, and you guys can see this. Naam.
What was the second type of tadlis?
Tadlis shuyukh. Shuyukh. When you make it, when you change the name of the sheikh, or even the country, Tadlis al-Buldan, there's something called Tadlis al-Buldan, or the country, his country name. So he's attributed to a country, you change the country. You know what I mean? So for example, instead of saying Minnesota, you say Minneapolis or Bloomington or something. You know what I mean? You change his country. He's known to be Fulan ibn Fulan al-Minnesoti, from Minnesota. But then you change it up and you say Bloomington. Not everybody, people outside of Minnesota, they don't know Bloomington. Not everybody knows Bloomington, right? So people think it's a whole different place. Well, Bloomington is inside Minnesota. That's another way of, changing it up. This is known as tadlis. Inshallah, we will stop there because time has expired. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.